constructing philosophy. Hello, and welcome back to, I guess, what's going to be another season of the Reconstructing Philosophy podcast. This time, though, we're out of lockdown and in the schools, and I'm talking to the Ethics and AI Society of Waterloo. Say hi, everybody. Hi. Okay, so we've been at this for about a semester now. Oh, and I forgot to grab my questions. There's only so much time you have to do everything. Well, let's remember some of them, I think. So let's start off with an interesting question, maybe at the end of a semester of talking about this. Something simple. Would you rather have an AI give you surgery or evaluate you for a job?
Give me surgery.
Why?
They did surgery on a grape.
You get what?
They did surgery on a grape.
On a grape?
Yeah, you don't see that?
Do you consider yourself equivalent to a grape?
I mean, no. But like,
okay,
it'd be very cool. Like, if I say I got into a car accident, right, and I need surgery, hypothetically, fingers crossed it doesn't happen, and I need surgery, and I don't trust the doctor because he's like, I don't really like doctors that much. Nothing against doctors, but like, it'd be cool to have a robot do it, like an arm that's controlled by like, I don't know.
More serious example though, your like laser eye surgeries are already done by the machine, which it's not exactly an AI, but it's a pre-programmed algorithm which, well, does what it does. Finds your eyeball, zap, and then you're done. Doctor usually just chills there and turns on the machine.
Which one do you think has more like ethical pitfalls potentially, though?
The surgery.
The surgery?
100%. I would say.
I think the job.
Really?
Yeah, because the surgery, if something goes wrong with the surgery, you can go back and like complain, like make a complaint, like this is clearly wrong, and there's like medical insurance and things that should like cover that. Whereas a job, like there's already like such like discrimination happens when you're applying to a job a lot of the time, and there's already so many like unfairness about applying to a job that I feel like there's more ethical concerns if it was just like some sort of AI algorithm hiring, because you can't really complain about it, like you can't really take it up with anyone.
So basically you can know easily when a surgery goes wrong because, well, surgery goes wrong and it didn't fix whatever it was supposed to fix. And whereas
something else.
Yeah, and opposed to like finding a job, or if you don't get the job, sucks to be you, like good luck next time.
Anyone else have a different view on this?
Personally, I think the AI on surgeries will be better just because of it is more technical aspects. So it is easier for us to assess that what the risks are and how the robots performs. And because machine learning has many opacities, it is hard for us to evaluate for the job marketing. So we didn't know what aspects or bias that the robot considers. So we cannot fully assess it, because even human assess applicant A is better than applicant B based on some measures that he may not figure out, because different job hires may have different standards. So it is very hard for a robot to assess which one is better.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like in the case of like surgery, right? There's a more sort of I guess technical component to it where you just want it to sort of perform well. Whereas with hiring algorithms, it's a bit more difficult, right? Because there's not only is there sort of, does it create more room for kind of creating social inequality, but like measuring and determining like what is a good hire seems to have a lot more ethical pitfalls than just determining whether someone is like healthy enough to go home after a surgery.
Yeah.
So basically a surgery is a less complicated problem to solve compared to job applications in this case, because a surgery is more set and easier for an AI to perform, because it just needs to do X, Y, and Z and like achieve the certain goal of fixing the patient. Whereas for a job application, it's a lot more dynamic and many more variables to consider.
Do each present a potential problem for like dehumanizing in the same way, or do you think that like one, if they both have that potential problem, does one seem like it might be worse than the other?
I still think it is the human jobbing one will be harder for us, because currently we already have many jobs that can be done by machines, and because the surgery is more precise one, so when we perform the operations using the machines, sometimes people can just make sure it is precise. So when a surgeon doing the operations, he or she may meet different circumstances, and these circumstances need instance. So he must be fast about the response, and the machine can do it fast. So on this, it has some advantages, and on the human hiring, I personally didn't find how much it is a lot better than the human does. Because despite that the machine can process it fast, I didn't see so much advantages to make the good of machines overcome the human dues.
I think about a different perspective where for a medical procedure, whether a human or AI does it, it's easy to assess the outcomes, and for anything that goes wrong, hold someone accountable for that bad outcome. Like you could, who exactly should take responsibility for the AI screwing up is up to discussion. But it's a lot easier to find someone who is responsible, be it the company that develops the algorithm, the hospital that uses the algorithm, and so on and so forth. But in the case of hiring, say like you aren't hired on the basis of discrimination that we find unacceptable, like racism, religion, so on and so forth. For a human, like it's easy to ask them, hey, why did I not get this job? And while like they could still try to hide the true intentions and motives, it's a lot easier to prove if they let slip that, oh yeah, like I just don't like you because of these reasons that we deem unacceptable. Whereas an algorithm is a lot harder to explain, because it usually takes some variables that nobody can see, or even if you can see, can't understand, and this spits out the result of you're hired, you're not. And when you ask, hey, like, is there some sort of bias, it's really hard to prove if it has those biases that we deem unacceptable, and therefore it's a lot more problematic, because the accountability is less than in the case of the surgery.
I'm kind of curious. How many of you would rather, if you were hired, if you were trying to get a job, would you feel more comfortable, or would you feel like it's you have a fairer shake if you were applying to somebody and you knew it was a human who was going to be looking at it, or an algorithm? Which would you rather if you were looking for fairness?
Yeah, for me, I think a human for sure, right? Because an algorithm, like, I don't know, I don't know. I think it just feels better a human's actually looking at, like, your resume or whatever, rather than, like, some algorithm that, like Ray said, like, you don't know how the algorithm was developed, like, what it's even looking for. Whereas a human, I don't know, you kind of, there's more like a personal connection, even though you may not know them. It's better than kind of a machine doing the job, per se.
But could we not, like, exercise some kind of, like, balance, and maybe instead of saying, like, either or, have, you know, humans augmented by artificial intelligence throughout the job research? Like, I think that's probably the most humane thing that we could ask. Like, if we want a humane institution of hiring, right? That is probably, realistically speaking, accounting for, like, how present technology is in society, that's the most like realistic means to achieving it. And we can see that like we've seen throughout the term that, you know, of course, augmenting any process through automation and through artificial intelligence can have negative consequences, but can also be like an extremely positive thing. Maybe, you know, job hires don't have the energy to parse through 10,000 selections, but you know, you can train AI to do that, and then from there, the harder work that requires, you know, soft skills could be done by humans, right? Because this is like kind of what we want the most, the human touch. Like, I think also in terms of like, also just quickly, I wanted to say that like, I think a lot of our peers have done like really good research into medical studies and like where AI has failed in terms of like ableism, in terms of racism, and like it doesn't have a beneficial outcome. And I think that like I think that there's something to be noted there. Like it seems that artificial intelligence can be used to just promote the worst in us, you know, but if done correctly, can be used to also promote the best of humanity.
So I like to add that I've thought about this a lot as well, the role that AI and automation should play in today's society. And it seems to me that it is a case where AI and automation is good if it does exactly what we want them to do, which is often a problem because it doesn't do that. So for example, take the job application, which we've been talking about, for example, then I think it would be fair to say that a recruiter would often just look for keywords on your resume anyways, and having a human look for that for tens of thousands of applications is just unrealistic. But a machine could easily scan for the keywords which you're looking for anyways, and in which case the algorithm is doing exactly what a human would be doing anyways, but faster. Then in that case, that would be good because it helps the human reduce their workload, and then they can just look at the filtered out applications and then do interviews and what have you. But it'll be more problematic when you say just let the algorithm handle everything after the keyword filtering, such as like some sort of interview selection process, some form of like interview replacement, like questionnaires, surveys, and so on and so forth. Then it becomes problematic because the machine will probably not make the same choices as a human would. And it's uncontrollable, frankly.
Sure, yeah, and I mean, I think like I agree. I kind of agree, I guess, but I also would love to see a world where like artificial intelligence can take the reins completely and make its own decision and its own judgment, and then like humans in this process also make their own judgment, and like possibly with a certain level of augmentation, and then there's a debate between, you know, artificial intelligence as its own form of intelligence and like humanity, and this is where I think maybe there's like a more fruitful, right, rather than just seeing artificial intelligence as this tool to make already existing institutions more efficient. What if we viewed it as a totally different way of like seeing the world, of knowing the world, and treating it as its own intelligence in and of itself? We don't expect answers that we want. Rather, it's just a totally new form of intelligence.
Like more of a collaborative?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, wouldn't that be more intriguing? I mean,
yeah, like...
And I think it almost opens up a door for a new paradigm of like, of knowledge production, you know? Whether it's like beneficial or not, I think is a different question. But like, I think like imagine how we design institutions and how to change. Could change dramatically.
That is a good idea in theory, but the problem is that in practice, currently, like what we call artificial intelligence, which is a really awful name, by the way, it is not really as capable as we think they are. And the reason I call it an awful name because artificial intelligence seems to make you feel that this is an intelligent being capable of like reason just like us, that it has like actual intelligence. But right now, the way it's implemented, it really doesn't. It just runs on pre-designed, essentially control flow algorithms where it checks different conditions and parameters and says, okay, this number is greater than this value, then I proceed down this line, and so on and so forth for a great number of those variables, which is why it gets uncontrollable and unexplainable when that number gets way too large and no humans can really understand what's going on anymore. But down at its core, it's still a very simplistic algorithm compared to what the complexity of the human brain, what we consider to be true intelligence. That's still a really simplistic model, or maybe even like a terrible form of mimicry, if you like to think that way. And like, in order to get to what you were talking about, saying that we have to go to great lengths technologically to essentially revolutionize how we make artificial intelligence. We require greater hardware computation powers. We require vastly radical changes to the actual designs of the algorithm, so that we can get close to like the actual intelligence that we hope to achieve. But
sure, but like, whether we've achieved intelligence or not, I think is a different question. What we do have now is really intriguing in and of itself. Whether we'd like to define it as intelligence or not is a different question, I think. But like, what would you say then to, the example of AlphaGo right now? Like, think of, if we boil this down to even simpler terms, rather than talking about really complicated things like surgery and, insurance or job applications, a game, a simple game can be augmented and changed completely by working with artificial intelligence. And I think that there's something there that can be like generalized, right? And of course, it might not be intelligence. It may just be a simple program that's run a lot of data. But whatever it is has changed the way that we approach this game, whatever the game is. There's something to be had there now.
And here's a more depressing thing that I didn't want to talk about, but kind of have to now since we got there. Speaking of games, what a lot of the, I guess, like the world champions of those games that are now solved by AI, or more or less solved, if we define solve as in the AI can regularly outperform the humans in those games. We know that chess, that was like several decades ago, the AI algorithms can already beat the world champions at the time. I think it was Deep Blue in 1998 or something like that. I don't remember the exact year, but they beat the world champion at the time. And then now we have AlphaGo, and like you see these champions essentially just like kind of throwing their hands up and saying, okay, yeah, like this game is done, like I'm done. And the same thing happened recently when AlphaGo beat one of the, like, I think top Go players in the world. He just went, yeah, screw this.
So interestingly enough, though, he went into like a bit of an episode where he's like, okay, there's no point in doing this because this game was playing in like the game was being played in the most like absurd, inhumane way. But I think from what I've heard recently is he's actually recognized the value of augmented games, where you would have like work in tandem with artificial intelligence and play together. And then you start to think, I think, especially differently about like what is success, what is like actually knowing something. Maybe it's not just having a definite answer, but approaching something in a really creative way. So it asks us to change the parameters of what we thought is important.
So I want to jump in here for a second because we don't have a ton of time left, so I still want to ask a few questions. So we've been talking about a lot of issues over the semester, and I'm wondering, after an entire semester of talking about all these things, what do you consider to be the most significant moral problem in AI today?
Certainly the unexplainability and the over-reliance on AI algorithms, which may not be the most ethical, but are efficient for whatever purpose, for example, profitability or just convenience, so on and so forth. But yeah, AI algorithm being used essentially without much check and balance, and almost sort of an abuse of AI algorithms when the use case is not really that appropriate, ethically speaking.
Anybody else? What do you take to be the most significant ethical problem today?
I would say privacy.
Privacy?
Yeah, I think the last part that we did on privacy really, like, there were some things in there that I hadn't really considered, like, especially with all the, like, micro-targeting. Like, I knew of micro-targeting, but I didn't know it went to, like, such extreme lengths.
And I think that's just one of the examples I was trying to get at, because this is really a case where, well, maybe you shouldn't do that with an AI algorithm, but that is profitable, so whoever that could use these algorithms decide, okay, so we will use it because it's profitable, even though it's not exactly ethical.
Well, it's interesting. In just recently, China passed a law which forces social media companies to allow users to turn off recommendations. It requires that algorithms be optimized to create good. It bans addictive algorithms, and it requires that users be informed about why an algorithm is recommending things to you.
That's neat.
What do you think of that?
That's neat. Because before that, they were already doing things like having like sort of a children mode for certain social media apps, because that would essentially just like filter out a lot of the content that's not exactly like valuable and potentially harmful for children, like the addictive aspect essentially of the recommendation algorithms, and instead pushes more like educational and like productive content, which I think was like really neat. Of course, the like children didn't necessarily appreciate it because now all the fun stuff are gone. But I think it's really neat that now they're trying to essentially extend this to the broader use cases in general.
The Minnesota has also proposed a law which would ban the use of recommendation algorithms to anyone under 18. Which is interesting because some social media companies are arguing that this would require first of all, they argue that this is a limitation on free speech. And secondly, they argue that this would require them to essentially invade their users' privacy even more, because apparently they just don't know which ones of their users are children.
Yeah, I mean, now it's just, are you 18 or older?
Extend the privacy issues.
So
it probably extends the privacy issues originally because we need to prove that I'm not under 18. I didn't need to show anything. Now now they maybe need us to show the certificates. For example, they may ask for camera, so show your face and check for your certificate. So to ID things. And
well, recently actually on Instagram, one of my peers shared something that was, sensitive content. I have no idea what it was, but I was asked to provide my birthday, and I didn't. Because I just couldn't care enough.
A post asked you to?
Yeah, on a story actually. Someone shared a story.
View the content?
And yeah, and it was like to view, because usually, you just tap view the content. But instead I tapped view the content and I was met with, please verify your birthday.
You should have just told them you're born in the 1890s.
Sure, I mean, who knows? I could have said whatever.
Lie on those things.
Yeah.
You think of how many underage people join Tinder, and you can just say, "Oh yeah, I'm above 18," or with YouTube laws and stuff when you have to be over 13 to
think of Facebook when Facebook came out. I remember for a specific example. I remember getting Facebook at the age of 9 because Subway Surfers would allow me to get I think 100,000 coins or something like that, and I lied about my age because of that. It's like
I did something like.
I
Very
mean,
similar.
I don't think
So-
I think many people have done
But
that.
I think this is a really great example of like an arbitrary descriptor that was valid for like other systems, right? For other technologies. You can't drink until you're 18 in the United States. And it makes sense, maybe. Maybe it does. I don't think it really makes sense. Right? We're 21 in the States, but whatever. These are arbitrary, they're really arbitrary delineations that are being used for novel technologies, and it's clear that like whatever they aren't adequate.
They don't work.
So we need to start thinking, and this is to me, and I'm gonna just pop in for a minute here. I think this is the greatest challenge for ethics of AI, is that currently it seems like we're using a ton of language and discourse that belongs to a paradigm that preceded this new technology that's transforming the world in such a unique way. And if we continue just like battering this challenge with this blunt wooden stick, we're gonna get nothing except for just more loopholes and more extraction. The challenge is to come up with like a new language. I think that's actually adequate. It's not asking about age restriction, but reimagining what makes someone capable of using a technology that can inform their psychology in such drastic ways.
Or vulnerable to that.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So
Which-
basically, the old system was already had experienced a lot of problems to begin with, and we're still trying to solve the new problems that we could encounter with our novel technologies with that old system that was kind of falling apart anyways, and that should be changed.
Yeah, I mean,
Given this opportunity that
I
we
think
need something
everyone on
new.
this table would attest to the fact that like age means nothing in terms of protecting someone from sensitive content or from addiction. You know, it's not the determinant. It's not the right thing to be just like passing policy on.
So then, how do you find the right thing? Like,
I don't think it's.
That's
like,
what philosophy
I think
is
it
for.
shouldn't be the only thing. I still think age is an important thing, but it's not the only thing that should be taken into consideration.
I think the problem is that we want to measure maturity either physically or mentally, but the only good indicator is age, because we have no other option that's easily attainable.
But also,
like
in,
Wouldn't that be interesting though? Like an algorithm that like, imagine if Facebook's algorithm not only sort of like determined who you are and what you like, but also like gauged your own vulnerabilities in order to make sure that it didn't exploit them.
Yeah.
But I would tread very, very
I think
carefully.
that'd be great.
I would tread very
Very
carefully.
optimistic.
But it's not, because we have like, it seems like the Facebook algorithm can create an image of its user quite accurately. So the question is, how do you want to be surveilled? It's not that if you are being surveilled. It's like, what are the determinants? What are the most important facets for a person?
Well, it's not like the algorithm doesn't know your vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
It's trained to.
Yes.
right?
So what if we could train it to do something similar but in a beneficial way? Has the capacity. It
Go-
does.
and
It's
that
not
goes back
that
to your
optimistic.
point, the collaboration between AI and us.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
But like the
so.
problem here is that we know from history of psychology that it gets dark if anything screws up even remotely, because just look at the 1900s American like psychology studies, which were like horribly conducted and misused to essentially the abuse of people. I would agree that yes, it would be amazing if we can essentially use this new technology to come up with measures and tests to like solve the problems that are issues to itself. But at the same time, a lot of this would relate to like the psychology that had a very problematic history when similar things were attempted. Like there were dark times when like you were essentially just I guess exiled out of society for like being not normal. And here, if we say we try to gauge like maturity of someone, so to decide how much sensitive content they can be exposed to, that could essentially lead to that same form of like, because you don't conform to the standard we set, we're going to exile you from this world that we created and this society that is virtual.
I mean, but there's a difference between maturity and measuring vulnerability, right?
And yeah, it's the same idea though, because you are trying to apply this one standard and then like judge people based on it. And I think that in and of itself is very problematic, or could get very problematic if anything goes wrong. So I'm kind of very alarmed by this idea. Not that we shouldn't do it, but we should be very, very careful, because history tells us that it could go very, very wrong.
I mean, would it be one standard though? Like, if the algorithm is essentially personalized to you, and it knows your vulnerabilities, and it knows how you can be manipulated, right? Then it's not. Then it's very much tailor-made to you. It's not a one standard,
True.
thing being applied to everybody. I mean, imagine, for example, if you were to walk into like a casino, and they were to like scan you or something and tell you that, oh no, you have a predilection towards gambling, so go away, right?
I mean,
But the problem is they aren't gonna do that.
It's like beneficial though, like in a sense, like gambling addiction is
a terrible thing, right? Like, I mean, I'm just like off the top of my head, I think of Michael Jordan. The guy's a massive gambler. Imagine he went to a casino and they were like, hey, Michael Jordan, you're not allowed in here because you gamble too much. Like, I feel like that could be, it could be like beneficial in a sense if you look at it from like a pharmaceutical standpoint. If you're in there and they have you logged for buying way too many, you're in there almost twice a week buying, and you're upping your doses, right? Like, if you were scanned and they said, hey, you're not allowed to buy anymore because your dosage or your amount of excessive buying is like too much, right? Like you're on the verge of addiction, or you're like going down a path that you might not be able to come back, like safeguards in a sense, right? Like, would that not be beneficial?
Yes, that would be, but then the problem is, how do you actually make people do it? Because that sounds like it directly conflicts with the interests and benefits of those entities that should be doing it. So like the casino is not going to turn away people who are like going to gamble at the establishment.
Well, you just, I mean, obviously this would be a different, obviously.
And that would become a social
This is
problem.
just an example to talk about how you would try to use it if you're trying to reform social media. So you kind of have to grant that.
Yeah, I feel like it's important to remember that people with addiction will find ways around these rules. So even if you implement something where, say, the algorithm assesses your vulnerability and stuff, I think eventually people will find out how to act and how to interact with content online to get around these types of.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not. I don't disagree with you. You can already see that today. You can talk about it for anything, addiction, whatever. If you talk about internet, content on the internet, things that are not explicitly available for children, they can find ways to get it. I know my sister is able to, go to live leaks and see ISIS cut people's heads off. She's told me, hey, did you see this video? I'm like, you're 9, why? But they find a way regardless, right? It's just the fact that you have the safeguard is, it sounds bad, but it's almost a safety net for the entities that have the safeguard.
And I think that this also and it harkens back to a lot of what we've been talking about. It can't necessarily be a solely technological solution, right? There's no sole tech solution to anything.
Exactly.
But what you can do is have that in place, and it is beneficial, but also develop social institutions and norms and cultural norms, right, around the implementation of this stuff. And maybe that is more important in the end. And this kind of technocentric approach is only kind of a predecessor to what really needs to be done, right, which is truer social reform.
Yeah, I agree with that. So basically use the technology to drive social change.
Yeah, exactly. I think so. Or use social change to drive technology, but in the end recognize that really what's at the heart of so much of this is social institutions and social values and cultural norms, right? You're not going to solve addiction through having a better, more
high-tech technology.
Or a more saturated image of someone's addiction, but you'd solve addiction through addressing kind of the cultural things at play. Right?
Or like the business model, the attention economy.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I think that's why this like law that you mentioned recently that was passed is fascinating. Like, and Ray, you've also mentioned this. Like, if you challenge the economy in that way, right? Like, what does that economy become? It's one of the most prominent, like, data is one of the most valuable resources right now. What happens to an economy when it can't function because you've completely limited, its means, its function, how it creates revenue?
I think here's the interesting thing though, like people and organizations and systems will adapt to outside changes no matter how severe it is. Because, for example, YouTube had increasingly more and annoying ads, and so more people started using ad block, right? And the people who upload videos and were going to rely on ad revenue could not get that revenue anymore, or not as much of it, because people are using ad block and therefore not watching the ads. And what they're doing is adapting to that scenario, and by introducing like sponsors, where they just like put like segues in their content to like make advertisements for sort of like a personal like vouching for this product, like, hey, like you should use this, as opposed to letting YouTube handle the advertisement and therefore revenue distribution on the platform. And I think that is really neat. And from this, the more interesting thing is that now people are figuring out like the sponsor block extension, where you can like have everyone just put, okay, here's the start of the sponsorship, here's the end, you can just skip the thing, or like sometimes it even does it automatically for you. And I think it's a really interesting development, and I wonder where this will go. Because it's essentially a like live demonstration of how systems adapt to like restrictions and like change.
But maybe there needs to be a really serious conversation of like what we do want, like what, like if so many people are rejecting advertisements, why do we need to continually fund this machine of advertising and public relations? Like, I mean, just get like I think within the next like 30 years, like our generation is gonna have to seriously ask like questions around what labor is actually valuable, is like, and doesn't just deepen pockets of already wealthy, groups. Just actual labor that has value and meaning has to take some forefront. We have to start measuring wealth in different ways. Again, this comes back to maybe talking about like social solutions, right? Like maybe we find out that PR and advertising just doesn't really serve to help.
I mean, I think that advertising, let's stick to this like concrete example. I think advertisements are valuable because like information is not available to all, and advertisement is one method to like make products and services known to other people, and that's like an essential aspect of doing business, of being able to do business. But the problem is that people don't want advertisements to be invasive and annoying, which is like, for example, YouTube. What YouTube started doing at first, it was like one ad like every 10 video or something back in the old days, and then it got to like one per 5 videos, and then like one ad per video, and then like 2 per video, but you can still skip them after like 3 seconds, and then it got to like just 2 per video that are like 15 to 30 seconds long, which you can't skip. It just gets it encroaches upon you, and people find that unacceptable, and so they start reacting to that. So what I think is that we don't necessarily need to know what we want. We can just like essentially bury what we don't want, and then have the system react to that change until we iterate and get to a system where we are satisfied with it.
But like, what's that satisfaction like pushing towards? Like, if you don't want ads, it's just because you don't have an attention span that can like suffer the 30 seconds of watching it, right? Like, if you bury those ads, what's it really like doing? If you're like,
you force them to go find like actual like acceptable ways of advertising. Like I personally think that, say for example, sticking to advertisements, like if you have like those like banners sort of things on the side where it doesn't like it's not too distracting. Like there are a lot of them trying to be distracting, like by like moving a lot and having flashy like colors and such. That gets bad, but like if they don't do that, it's just like normal sort of like on the roadside advertisements, then like it's fine. I think that's okay. If I see something I'm interested in, I might even like buy it. I don't know, like I've seen advertisements where it's like genuinely good and like it actually like met my needs and I was satisfied with it because it's useful to both me and the whoever that was selling the goods or services. But like I think the problem is like how they do it, and like the solution I sort of propose by burying what we don't want is essentially saying no to everything that's not working until like they find a thing that's working and we're good with it and we don't just kill it anymore.
Ray, I think so. YouTube is like such a large platform, and you are one person out of billions, right? It's definitely working for a lot of people, right? They're using YouTube. So I think, and the thing with YouTube is like, even if let's say 1%, like if it's working for 95% of the people, let's say, like it's fine. Like I personally think I'm okay with there being ads in my videos, like how it works, because I don't want to have to pay for Netflix or something. I'd rather just watch something on YouTube. I have to suffer, right, in quotations, through an ad for 30 seconds. I'm okay with that personally, right? So, and I think it is working, right? So
Unfortunately, we're gonna have to cut this interesting conversation short because we're short on time. The semester is dying slowly. So this has been a really interesting whole semester. This has been a great group. I love the fact that I was able to teach this for the first time, and yeah, what a great group to have. I want to also thank our student officers. If we could give them a little round of applause for all the work that they put in this semester. Okay, and unfortunately, I think we are all at a time. We have to go meet our TA for the semester downstairs. So with that, I'm going to sign off. This has been another episode of the Reconstructing Philosophy podcast. Does everybody want to say goodbye? Bye. 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 Okay, thank you for listening as well. Goodbye.